Jessica Jefferies. I'm a casting director, so I cast actors, mainly in video games, but also I work in animation, film, TV, but SFX, VFX, new media, and video games is where I mainly work.
Yeah, so how is casting for new media different from film and television, and why did you specifically choose that as your specialization?
Um, it's there are a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences. So the similarities are it's all about the acting. You know, we need good acting. We need connection to character, connection to text. Um, However, sprinkled on top is this extra layer of working with VFX and different technologies. So, as an actor, you might be working within performance capture, which means you're in a lycra suit with no props, no set, no lighting, no nothing, and it's heavily reliant on your imagination. Um, we need complete connection between your physicality, your voice, and your facial performance so that you can really drive that character rig. Um, or I might be casting you for voice only, which means I need to hear real storytelling through what you're telling us. And again, I need that connection from you, a real truth and understanding of what it is you're delivering vocally. So there's similarities, but also a lot of difference. Um, what was the other? How did I get into it? Why did I choose it? It's an interesting little niche. Um, but basically, I was an actor. So I graduated from drama school in 2010, and shortly after that, I got my first job in motion capture on a video game. And
Was
from
that sort of accidental, or were you specifically trying to get into it?
no, I wasn't all that aware of it as a field to be able to go into. I did a course at drama school. I did acting and stage combat, trained in London as an actor, and so I was very much into physicality and physical storytelling, and I wanted to do like fighting and fun stuff and play with guns. So video games was kind of where it led me quite naturally. So yeah, it was accidental, but I fell in love with it immediately. And yeah, one job sort of led to another and led to another, and I worked fairly consistently in performance capture and mainly in video games and film for 8 years, and then decided to hang up my lycra and move into casting. So it's the world that I know. It's the world that I knew as an actor. So it made sense.
So you're saying that video games is kind of more similar to theater than film and television would feel because it's more like in the body?
I'd say it's a perfect hybrid of the two, if I'm honest. So
Mm.
it was it's been described as like very, very intimate theatre in the round. So you don't have the projection that you might need in your performances as theatre would, but you need that connection 360 degrees as if audience is watching every bit of you tell that story, just as you would in theatre. You need to be alive.
Do you have a particular casting success story that you're especially proud of?
Do you know what? I've been quite lucky. There's been a couple of them. There's been a couple of times where I've been fortunate enough to offer people their first professional job outside of training. So maybe they've not had many auditions or not had much luck, and it's been a year or so, or so that's always amazing to be able to give the time and the energy and the space for somebody to be brand new and be brilliant. Um, that's really nice. I always love that. Um, there's been a couple. I had one recently for a video game where the director was so wonderfully open to ideas. They had the script, and he was just like, "Hey, I mean, this person could be German or Thai, or." So he was really open to lots of different ideas, and there was this sort of gangstery character, um, and I had this actress in my head, and I was like, I I want this to be a woman, and I feel like this woman could do it. So we saw a handful of guys, and then I brought this actress in, and she blew everyone away, and the subtleties that she brought to it, and I was just like, yes, because that's exactly what I was thinking of. So being able to flip a character sometimes and um, be trusted by the creative team to do that, that's always wonderful.
I didn't realize that casting directors could have such an impact on story. Like, that's amazing.
Sometimes we're allowed.
Sometimes.
Other times, it's a bit more restrictive. In depends on how far along the process the rest
Mm,
of the team are and when you're brought in and things like that. Um, a lot of the time in video games, characters are designed already, so it's quite a big thing to have to change that design. So if we're going from what's been written as a male to then having to rewrite that and redesign a whole character rig, it's not as easy as just drawing a new one. That
mhm.
character's already been put into the game engine and things, so it's a big deal to have to change that.
Do you feel constricted to have to match like the person to what's already been drawn or the character design?
I don't think so. I can see how people could think that it's fairly restrictive, but actually, when you're given a really well written character that's got depth, and you, with the director or the writer, are pulling this character apart and really delving into who they are, it's still just as interesting to find the actor to fit that than having something that's also been written pretty well and just seeing who could bring that alive from an array of different personalities and different people. Um, so yeah, I'd say it's just as interesting when it's specific.
Do you have any tips and advice for people in your industry who would want a career similar to yours?
Yeah, probably think about it a little bit more than I did. I, 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 no, I thought about it for a very long time, and I
Mm,
knew that what I felt was missing in the UK games industry was a casting director that specialized and really understood this area of the industry, knew how to talk to game developers, knew what agents and actors should know about the business. Um, and that didn't really exist. So I put myself in that position, but I put myself there without ever being another casting director's assistant or being anyone's associate or really working my way up through the ranks. So I learned on the job and probably do things a little bit different from other people. But what I do fits, I believe, fits the area of the industry that I work in and fits the genre that I know and love. Um, but I'd say learning from other people. If you want to get into casting, then assisting and going up through the ranks is always great. Watch stuff if you've got an interest, and honestly, I don't think any niche is too small. Like if that's the work that is calling you, then specialize, do it. I'd say that.
I kind of want to talk about that time where you pivoted from actor to casting director. Like, how did you find the courage to make that jump, and what was it like starting your own company? Oh yeah, big sigh.
Yeah, it was mad. I had a couple of really great friends that just basically egged me to do it. I was talking about it for months. I had a friend called Adam who is a great designer and graphic designer, and he designed my logo and was like, "Look, that's you as a casting director." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Like, so they really helped boost me into doing it. And then I started talking to a couple of game developers that I knew and that I worked with a lot as an actor. And I said, this is what's missing. You come direct to actors, which is why you use the same small handful of us all the time for all of your games, whether we're right for those characters or not. Whereas we could delve deeper and I could be your access to all of the talent in the UK. I started to pitch myself over the course of a few months. Um, and then I was on a job. I was doing performance capture on Maleficent 2, a Disney film. And I got a call from a producer saying, "Hey, I've got a job for you to cast. Have you got time?" And I was like, "Yes." And so I was literally running off stage and sat in my Lycra, um, putting a casting brief together and doing that. And so I spent that final week doing both jobs together. And then when I wrapped on that film, I never acted again. That was it. I put everything into casting, and that was the end of me being an actor and the start of me being a casting director.
Wow, that's crazy. I
No,
love the
I've
image
been
of you
very
like in the
lucky.
Lycra.
I know,
Yeah, with all the
just
little, yeah, manually typing.
adminning. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
It was crazy because I didn't have like a casting login to Spotlight or anything. So I was then like calling Spotlight and being like, "No, I promise I am a casting director. I've got a job. I need to like it's paid. Um I need to get it out there and get some actors." And so yeah, I just suddenly had to set it all up and become a real company and become a real thing.
You've touched on slightly about like being a woman in the industry. Can you elaborate more on how like those two intersect and like the struggles that you had to face?
Yeah. When I first started as an actor in video games, I was there was more times than not, I was the only woman on set. So I'd be the only female actor. There'd be nobody in the game developer side or the creatives, nobody that was working at the motion capture studios that was a female either. And it was just so male dominant. And so were the stories. So the female characters were often underwritten. Um, I remember being on set one day and there was, I think, me and three other actors, all men, and we were being told what was happening in this next scene and who our characters were. And they were going to each of the guys, like, in lots of detail. "Oh, you're going to play Dan, and he's like this and this and this." And then they got to me and they went, "And you're generic female?" And that was it. That was my whole character. And I was like, "Oh, this is what's wrong with the games industry." And luckily, everything has developed and moved on. And now we're we're telling female-led stories. We're populating the world with more characters of all sorts of diversity, not just um, diversity within gender, but diversity across the board. Um, and the teams that we work with often have different voices within those teams now as well. Um, Even just from a few years ago, I've got two children. My first little boy was born a week before that wonderful global pandemic all kicked off. So
Mm.
in 2020, just a week before the UK here went into lockdown, he was born. And I worked through lockdown casting pretty much with this framing and breastfeeding a baby at the same time. That was
Mm.
my lockdown. Um, and I had one person um, that sort of made a comment about like, "Oh, I, why have you got a baby there?" sort of thing. And
Mm.
it's like, well, I'm not legally allowed anybody else in my house, so my baby has to be here. Um, and and I think overall the understanding of that of being a working mum as well, and or just a working parent, being at home knowing I currently have those kids out in the garden, and I think that's a bit more understandable. But I do think there are challenges, and I think when I had my second son, he's just 6 months old now. I didn't tell anyone, so I was still holding castings while pretty hugely pregnant, um,
Mm.
and I'd sort of integrated my associate more into a couple of projects that I knew would be spanning over the time that I'd be having my baby, so that he'd be able to take the lead on those projects. Because I definitely had the fear that someone would make the decision for me that I wasn't capable of continuing working, or would make the decision for me as to what projects I take on or don't as a director of my own company. And I think that's something that's carried with anyone that's freelance and a woman. I think we think about those things that probably a man wouldn't ever have to think about, really.
Yeah, you like put that pressure on yourself to like act like you're not pregnant.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and to still seem as capable as ever. I think that's the main
Hmm.
thing. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it sounds
it's a
hard.
whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Um, when you're like as a casting director, what is it that you're looking for in your actors? Like maybe if an actor was watching this, like what kind of tips would you give them?
um, it's all about connection for me. So it's about being obviously a really great actor, but someone who's thought about who this character is, really read the text, and is showcasing a real connection to that, and thinking about the scene in a more 360 um, way. So I want to know that they've thought about where they are, what noises or people are around them, who they're talking to, what they're wearing, how does that make them stand? Where's the where does this person's voice sit? How are they using their voice to communicate their thoughts? Um, it sounds like a lot when I say it out loud. I want all of that neatly in a bow. So it's about finding truth in anything you do, and that comes. I get to cast some weird and wonderful characters for video games, but I still want there to be. I still want them to be embedded in truth, and I still want them to be grounded, and I want to feel the connection. I don't think it has to be a character that has any similarities to you, but you as an actor, I want you to delve in and find interesting things that you can hold on to as an actor when you're portraying these characters.
For you, is it like a gut feeling? Like, do you know like right away?
I think you can, yeah, I mean, you can tell straight away, I think, if somebody is energized, connected, a good actor. You can tell that within 30 seconds of watching a self tape or seeing someone in person. But then what keeps you watching or what makes you ask to see more from that actor is whether they're choosing interesting thoughts and portraying them well, whether they're picking out interesting moments in text, whether they've thought about the beats that they're delivering in a text, um, and just whether there's something interesting and nuanced of what they're giving. Um, and again, just to that all of them is alive. That I'm not just seeing sort of dead eyes and a mouth move. I want to
Mm.
see that light behind the eyes. I want to see the connection with their breath, so they're really telling that story.
Do you think that all your experience as an actor has helped you be able to like pinpoint those things all that much better?
I think so. I wish I'd have known it. I probably would have worked a lot more if I'd have been able to have directed myself in the same way that I now direct actors. Um, but I think it's more that it's given me. I've been there, so I know what it's
Mm.
like to stand in an audition room or to write an email and be waiting for a reply, or to send a self tape and just hope it's getting watched and not know what the reception of that tape is going to be. I've been there, and I think that's given me more of a USP probably. I think probably quite a few casting directors started in acting, and I do think it helps because we've been there, we understand it. It's like, you know, You can always tell if a customer in a restaurant has never actually worked in a restaurant, because if you've
Mm.
worked in a cafe or a restaurant or done any sort of hospitality, you know not to be an asshole.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the same with casting when you've been there.
Mm.
Um, you know what the actor's going through, you know the energy that it's taken to put themselves out there. So we appreciate it.
Mm. What kind of skills do casting directors need to be successful? Like, what do you think really helped you, other than, we talked a little bit about you being an actor, but
Mm. Admin. You've got to be
okay.
really on it with admin. There's a lot of admin that goes on. You've got to be super organized. Um, and it's, you've got to, I think, you've got to like actors. You've got to want them to be great. You've got to enjoy the connection with actors. You've got to enjoy um, spending that time watching hours and hours of tapes, looking through and watching hours and hours of show reels. You've got to enjoy stories and storytelling and reading scripts and have that imagination to picture characters in your head and hear voices and be flexible with that and guide directors, guide actors, um, and hopefully also be quite good at remembering names and faces so that they
Yeah.
can pop back to you when you need them.
Well, that's all the questions that I have. Is there anywhere like you want to let us know where you can follow you, keep up with all that's going on in your company?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, which is at Jessica J Casting, and we've got some very exciting projects coming out. So we've just had the release of the Peaky Blinders King's Ransom video game that's just come out, the VR project. We've got one called Unknown 9, which will be released with Reflector Studios, and Next Studios and Tencent will be releasing Synced Off Planet. And there's 3 games that we've worked on recently that are all going to be released this year.
Oh, that's all very exciting. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.